You know, one of the hardest things for me to counsel as a psychotherapist is a narcissistic parent. It's really hard to try to get to the heart of who they are and to try to really help them do self-reflection and really support their adult child or their actual child in psychotherapy. One of the things the narcissistic parents fail to recognize within themselves is that they are the biggest problem in their child's life. A narcissistic parent is not easy to live with, and it's certainly not easy to do therapy with. Just imagine going to a therapy session with a narcissistic parent who only sees their own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, only wants and feels like they need things that's going to help them live in the way that they want to live without your input. Imagine going to psychotherapy with a parent who just simply has absolutely no insight into how they are negatively impacting you as the child. And I see it a lot more than I care to acknowledge. And let me just add, as a professional, it's one of the hardest things to counsel because, you know, you need a parent who's going to be able to see within themselves. And you also need a parent that's going to be able to consider how you're feeling and thinking. But if you don't have that, then you're left to try to pick up the pieces on your own. It's like narcissistic parents, you know, break apart a puzzle that has been created. We are complex human beings. We have a lot of components to who we are as we develop and we grow over time. And a narcissistic parent is like that sore loser who balls his fists up and slams his fist down on the puzzle and breaks the pieces all apart, if you can visualize that with me. So in today's video, I'm going to talk to you about cognitive distortions. I'm going to explain what those are, and I'm also going to give you some tips on how to manage the narcissistic parent. But before we do that, let me briefly introduce myself in case you are new to the channel. My name is Tamara. I'm internationally and board certified in trauma therapy. I'm licensed in mental health. I specialize in treating children, teens, and families, as well as adults who are dealing with trauma. Let's go ahead and jump in. So I've already explained at the very beginning of this video what a narcissistic parent is. And if you want to see my most recent videos on narcissism, go ahead and check these videos out right here. It gives you a little bit more background. In today's video, I'm just going to give you some tips, and I'm going to introduce you to the idea of cognitive distortions. So let's start with the first thing. How do you deal with a narcissistic parent who likes to argue, who likes to triangulate, who likes to boss you, who likes to control you, who likes to undermine you? Is that the word I'm looking for? Undermine you? Yeah, undermine you. That's the word I'm looking for. Parents that just really feel that they are on top no matter what. So what do you do to prevent this power struggle, this argumentative spirit that's between you and your parent? Well, I always tell my clients, embrace conflict resolution. Now, conflict resolution is this huge thing. We could have an entire video on it, but I want to give you just a little bit of info that you can actually use for today. So this is practical advice. The first step in conflict resolution is to avoid blaming. The last thing that you want to do is blame a narcissistic parent, because the minute you blame them, that's the minute you lose the whole battle. Consider the relationship with a narcissist as playing poker, right? I know very little about poker, but I know a little bit to know that at the poker table, you want to keep your poker face on, and your goal is to win, right? So you have to try all these different strategies so that you can get to the end of the game as the winner, right? The minute you blame and the minute you start pointing fingers, that's the minute that you have completely lost them. We all know that narcissists are self-centered, selfish, cold-hearted, callous people. We know that. We don't necessarily need to tell the narcissist that they are, right? Because we're saying you, and the minute they sense that, their very fragile ego is going to shatter. So you don't want to blame them. Avoid that. The next thing in conflict resolution is focus on I messages. You don't necessarily have to say, you've created this whole big problem in our family. You could say something as simple as, I feel like you have created this big issue in my family, right? You could also, instead of saying something like, you're always dramatic when it comes to my sister, Sophie, instead of saying it that way, you could say something like, I feel like you constantly respond to things in a dramatic way when it has something to do with my sister, right? So turn the way that you use those sentences and those words, use I messages. The next thing is avoid this emotional outrage, avoid losing yourself in emotions, stay firm, cool, collected, and calm. Be objective. And that's the best way to deal with a narcissist. A narcissist can sometimes wind themselves around a dramatic person and create what's known as triangulation. I talk about triangulation right up here in this video, so go check that out. You want to avoid getting into that kind of situation with a narcissist because you're going to lose, right? And if they are malignant narcissists, or if they are a vulnerable narcissist, they may try to get you back for what you're doing and what you're saying about them, right? So you want to stay out of that by avoiding that emotional and that dramatic expression of emotions. Just be very firm, cool, collected, objective. Try reflection, right? Help that family member, if it's your parent, for example, that grandparent, whoever's raised you, help them try to go within, at least for the moment, right? So temporarily. You're not going to get a narcissist who's going to say, you know what? I am sorry I did A, B, and C. I was not thinking. You're not going to get that, right? So what you want to do is talk to this person and say, I just felt like you misunderstood me. So I'm hoping that we can come to a place of understanding. Always take the high road, right? So try to make statements that causes them to see themselves so that they can start to think about what they've done, right? Without you saying you could say something like, I don't want to be the kind of person that pushes people around. So I'm sorry if I came across that way. That's a nice passive undercurrent way to say you're kind of like that, and it gets the narcissist to kind of go within. Avoid focusing on them as the problem, okay? When you address the narcissist or you're trying to use conflict resolution, you just want to focus on the problem, right? Not the person who created the problem. So tweak that a little bit. Let's say, for example, you're a narcissistic parent, paid your rent for the month and you accidentally took out more money than you needed to. This is an example. Instead of saying, to your narcissistic parent, I told you to write down how much money was supposed to be in that account so I could withdraw it. Instead of doing that, you want to say something like, geez, I don't know if you forgot or I forgot, but somewhere the information got mistranslated or miscommunicated, and I'm sorry. Next time, Mom, do you mind doing A, B, and C? That's a nice way to kind of get around blaming her as the issue. You're kind of focusing on the problem, which is that you took too much money out of the bank. The next thing is stay level-headed no matter what. You don't want to get out of that zone of being level-headed because then that's when the narcissist starts to feel threatened and they need to be on top, most of them, right? So you want to remain on the top in order to get through that conversation or that confrontation with the narcissist. So avoid losing your head. That's not what you want to do. Avoid tick-for-tack behaviors. It's not going to do anything but make you feel better temporarily. And it actually might cause other people to see you in a negative way as opposed to seeing your parent as the problem and as the stirrer in the pot of soup, right? You want that parent to be shown up as the one who's causing the issues when that's really the truth, right? You don't want anybody else to look at you and say, yeah, but you did A, B, and C, and so did Mom. So who do we trust here, right? Who's doing what? You don't want to get mixed up in that confusion, so avoid that tick-for-tack behavior. Do some self-reflection into yourself. Use scaling questions. Scaling questions is basically this. On a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, where do I feel, where am I on that scale, right? How anxious am I right now being in my mother's presence and my father's presence? 1, absolutely no anxiety. 10, through the roof, right? Where am I along that scale? And that's a good way to help yourself kind of reflect, go within, and determine what's going on the inside of you so that you can then approach the situation in a calm way. Now, you know that if your anxiety is a 10, you certainly don't want to have a confrontation with your parent, right? Because it's not going to go anywhere. If you use that scaling question and you're about a 5, we can work with that, right? Because some anger and some endorphins and energy can kind of help you to get your point across to that narcissistic parent, right? So sometimes it's good to have that endorphin rush, right? But other times, if you're a 10, you're not going to get anywhere. So just don't even get into a conversation if you realize on that scale that you're probably not a 5 or below. Give the impression of active listening. That's the next one. Active listening is the process of really listening to the person, giving them eye contact, and sometimes being able to reflect to them what they have said to you, right? So an example of that would be, let's say you're seeing me as a therapist and you say, Tamara, I've just been feeling really depressed. I've been feeling out of it. I'm unmotivated. I'm tired. I just don't know what to do anymore. My reflection of what you just said to me would be something like, So what I'm hearing you say is that you're just maybe feeling tired, you are exhausted, you're emotional, you're anxious, and you're at a place where you don't know which way to go. Is that right? That's reflection, okay? So reflect back to that narcissist, what you heard. That kind of keeps the narcissist from locking you into a corner or into a bind where they said something they didn't say, or where they accuse you of misunderstanding them. Reflect back to them what it is that you have heard. Okay, that's the best way to deal with that. Avoid interrupting them in conversation. The minute you interrupt a narcissist is the minute you've gone off the road. A narcissist does not like to be interrupted. And when you interrupt them, it's almost a little bit like a power play, right? You interrupt a person, it almost feels like you're saying, you know what you're saying is minimal and I don't care. You're up here when you interrupt them. You want to try to remain here with a narcissist, especially a vulnerable narcissist. You don't want to trigger their insecurity. So the best thing to do is to make sure that you don't interrupt them in conversation, because that's not going to turn out too well. The next thing I'm going to suggest here is know what kind of narcissist that you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a vulnerable narcissist, great. You may be able to really learn how to maneuver those conversations with that vulnerable narcissistic parent, right? If you're dealing with a malignant narcissist, you can literally Google that, and there's tons of articles on that type, right? Go ahead and check my video out that I just recently did on the types of narcissists that there are. There may be a few in there you haven't heard of before, but know the type of narcissist that you are dealing with. So how do we deal with your mind when it comes to managing this narcissist? Well, there's a few things I suggest, but I'm going to suggest one important thing in this video, which is be aware of something known as cognitive distortions. A narcissistic parent has a really good way of making you feel small. And the best way to make you feel small is to cause you to second guess yourself, which could be the act of gaslighting, right? They sometimes stonewall, meaning that, they refuse to talk to you until they feel like they're going to get their way, or they have some kind of control or some kind of power over you. They're not going to communicate. So we know narcissistic parents do that. But narcissistic parents also make you feel small, and they really do try to put you in this box of control, right? And they hold that control over you. The best way to fight against that is to be able to go within yourself and reflect, but be able to go within yourself and ask yourself, what is it that's happening in my mind at this moment right now? Am I feeling insecure? Am I feeling like I'm never going to win this battle with my parent? Am I feeling minimized and condescended? Am I feeling lonely and insecure? Am I afraid? Am I anxious? Am I depressed? And the best way to figure that out is to learn about cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions are really skewed and twisted ways that we think about situations because of how we're feeling, because of how we're thinking, or because of the situation that we're in. And here are a few cognitive distortions right here on the screen. I'm sure you guys have done some of these, all or none thinking or polarization. You can call it polarized thinking as well. There's no gray in the middle of this situation. It's always black or white, right? A narcissist is sometimes like that. They either hold a grudge against you or they forgive you. There's no in between, right? You may also notice mental filtering. You focus on all the negatives and not the positives. You disqualify the positives. Should statements. I should have been able to control myself better. I should not have given in to my parent. I should not have let her get upset. And I should not have gotten upset with her, right? So should statements can keep you locked in a prison as well. All those I should have is living in the past. And it's really causing insecurity that you don't need. You may also see personalization in yourself. You may also see yourself labeling after you deal with a narcissistic parent. I'm stupid. I'm not very intelligent. I'm a loser. I'm never going to be happy, right? So keep in mind these cognitive distortions. And I'm going to post a link in the description box below so that you can learn a little bit more about these distortions. I encourage you, like I encourage my clients, to really practice being aware of when you're using these, because using these twisted or skewed ways of thinking really can drop your self-esteem. It can drop your self-confidence, and it can also drop your ability to stand firm with that narcissistic parent. If you're aware of what you're doing, you can kind of pump the brakes on it and kind of click yourself back into reality. I'm going to consider bringing this topic back up in another video where I can give you tools on how to face these cognitive distortions. Thank you so much for being with me in this video today, guys. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell button so that you get all notifications on anything that I post on YouTube. And please give this video a thumbs up if it was helpful to you. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.